Hey everyone, this is Shintai, and here with me I have my good friend, Forestlock. How are you doing, man?
It's a pleasure to be back on for another review.
Good to hear, man. Today we're going to be doing a review of Resident Evil 5, specifically the Gold Edition. Forestlock and I just finished playing through the entire game together, from start to finish, including all of the DLC that the Gold Edition comes with. We have a lot of things to say about this game. What'd you think of the visuals?
Well, for a game that came out a few years back, and now that we're looking at Resident Evil 6, the game's aged pretty well visually, and the game looks really impressive even still. When you look at the cutscenes, they look very impressive. Capcom has never disappointed in any of the Resident Evil games when it came down to graphics. Resident Evil 5 does not disappoint in that area.
Yeah, I agree. It's a really good looking game. I was surprised because sometimes when you go back to some of these older current generation games, you're like, oh, it's so amazing the first time you play it. And you go back and you're like, oh, it's really not. But this game holds up. It still looks really good. It's got really great lighting and shadowing effects and stuff, and the monster designs, some of them are pretty cool. I think it's a great looking game. It still holds up pretty well. Even though, Resident Evil 6 just came out, it still stacks up compared to it.
I agree with that.
This game also has not a lot of cutscenes in it. You're more of a fan of the series than I am. I've only really played like 4 and 5, very little of 1 when I was a kid. But you've played all through the game, so I'll leave the story segment to you because you're much more like well-versed.
Well, in this game for Resident Evil 5, the story is based around the BSAA. Chris and Shiva are part of this organization, and they head into Africa to infiltrate this new BOW. There's this new form of the Ganados from Resident Evil 4 called the Mangini. It's this new parasite that's infected into humans, and it transforms, and they are able to be controlled by any person they see fit. Kind of similar to how 4 was. What you encounter in the story is what Shintai said, and even playing the game, Shintai will speak for me on this. You're going to the game not really knowing anything that's going on in the beginning. What the game tries to present itself with is just giving you some of the understandings of Chris and his confusion, because when you really get down to it, it sounds like Chris in the beginning of the game is trying to understand what the reason of him doing this, being in this organization and fighting for this cause over time. Dating back to the first Resident Evil in the Arklay Mountains near Raccoon City in 1998 is where it started in the storyline of Resident Evil. Going through all these different trials and tribulations in the Resident Evil franchise, going from the first game to Resident Evil 5, Chris is now doubting himself at this point whether it's even worth continuing on this manhunt quest to stop this disease, this virus that's spreading around the world and just causing all of these different monsters and humans transforming. At this point, he's really not sure if it's worth fighting for this. You also, in the story, will start to realize Shiva, although she does bring some interesting notions to the story, she's not really hugely important. Nothing wrong with Shiva as a character. I mean, she is cool, especially when we get into the gameplay portion. You'll start realizing how cool she really is.
In my opinion, she kind of just felt like a replacement for Jill.
Exactly. When you get into the story of Shiva, you will at some point start to realize with Chris that he starts reflecting on flashbacks. It's very minor, but when they're there, he starts to reflect on this character, Jill. You start to then realize why a lot of his frustrations and his passion for this starts to really set forth in the middle of the game. But by the time you get to the middle of the game, you've already got to a point in the game where you're like thinking, what is going on in the story? Because I think me and Shintai, as we were playing it co-op, we really weren't too interested in the story. Now, for myself, I've played the game before several times, so I kind of knew what was going on. But being that Shintai's played it his first time through, it was very understandable that what was going on in the story. Limited cutscenes to explain it, pretty much nothing. The cutscenes kind of just showed off some of the enemies' transformations for the most part. The game's story doesn't really open up till the 5th chapter. Things really start to wind up, start to make a little bit of sense. But the main problem with the story, you really don't have any understanding of the overall area that this is affecting by. I mean, yeah, sure, you're in a village and you start going to different places, but you don't really see the huge magnitude of what's going on around you, with the exception of where you are. Although, I guess to be understanding, you do see that in other previous Resident Evil games.
That's actually one of the problems that I had with the story. I felt that since I'm not a longtime fan of the series, that I didn't play the other Resident Evil games. I felt that there were certain things I was missing and certain things that I didn't understand or didn't get. I never got that from Resident Evil 4. The worst I ever got in Resident Evil 4 was was when Leon and Ada started talking to each other, you could tell they had a history. It didn't really feel like I was really missing out that much. But in Resident Evil 5, it felt more that, oh, I don't know anything about Umbrella. I don't understand some of the things that's going on, like what's the T-virus, things like that. It's like there were things I didn't understand. And because of that, I felt that I was kind of missing out.
I will say, though, for in Shintai's case, for a first-time player in the story of Resident Evil 5, at least need to play Resident Evil 1, because in that game, that's where Chris and Jill originated from. Just understanding Chris and his personality, and since I did mention a spoiler thing, understanding Jill at some point in the game. Put those two and two together. I look at it as fan service to people who really like the first Resident Evil. We're going to get to why I say that later in the gameplay. It really is more for fans of the original Resident Evil games, the older ones, because a lot of the characters in this game are more or less characters that have been in previous games out to either get revenge or kind of break away from their present to backstory, so to speak. That's kind of how I felt about 5. It really wasn't more or less about the main plot of the story. It was about back history and what was going on up until this point.
Honestly, I felt that Resident Evil 5's story is probably like the weakest part of the game. For someone who's not really a big fan of the series, it was hard for me to get into. There wasn't much of it, and when there was, it was just kind of like, huh? What? Like the first half of the game, none of the cutscenes really explain anything. It really felt like the majority of the game just felt like, okay, let's focus on making the gameplay good. Let's focus on making everything really cool and really flashy and really interesting. And then halfway through, they were like, oh, crap, we need to write a story. So let's just throw something in there that ties into the original game.
That's exactly how I felt too the first time I played it.
But seeing as we both kind of agree that this isn't really a game to play for the story, we can talk about the gameplay. Personally, I had a lot of fun with this game. I thought that there were a lot of things to really like in the gameplay aspect. But the most important thing is this is definitely a co-op game. I tried playing this game by myself a little bit, and while I didn't think it was that bad, like a lot of people really complain about the AI companion, while I could see some of that, I didn't think it was absolutely terrible or unplayable. But this was definitely something I felt was like, yeah, they made this so you could play with your friend. This was not a game that was meant to be played by yourself for the most part.
Yeah, I do agree with it. Now, I know Shintai only played a little bit of the game single player, but I've played through the whole game single player. So you could say, for example, you break a box open and there's an item there, or you walk by and there's an item there. Sometimes the AI won't pick it up. There are times where you're just like, okay, I'm going to grab this money over here, and there's maybe an item near. If you get into a point in the game where you have reactions on, where you set the characters to react to what you're doing, if you have it on and you go and you pick up an item, the ally will actually go and pick up everything surrounding you, which is okay, and you can always get the items back. It's a problem too, because say for example, in my case, when I was playing after we had lost connection in the game, I was still playing, I'm like, okay, I need to die to restart this mission again. And I remember I intentionally wanted to die, which it may sound dumb as to why you want to die, but in a situation where you just want to restart over, which you can, I was just trying to see if I could just die. And no matter what you did, Shiva would always cure you, which is like, okay, fine. Which in that respect, the AI is not dumb in the fact that it can cure you. The AI is dumb in the fact that she wastes way too much ammo on enemies. You're sitting there conserving, she's sitting there just shooting everything in sight, wasting all of her ammo, and then expecting you to give her some when you don't have any barely for yourself. Also, the ally can always die on you at any time, always gets caught by enemies, and can put you in a very bad situation. It is not the smartest AI that I've ever seen in a game, but it's not bad. If anything, it's to a point can beat the game with the AI. It won't be easy. It's far different in co-op than it is single player. AI is probably not the best way to go playing the game single player. If you can play this with somebody, it's highly recommended.
Now, as I said in the beginning of this review, this was a game that me and Forest Lock played from start to finish together. I had a lot of fun playing with Forest Lock. Playing the game with a friend really added a lot to the experience. I could tell playing through the game that there were a lot of aspects of the gameplay that was tailored to making this a game that you play together with a friend. You can pick up items, but you can share between. They made it so that when you pick up treasure or if you pick up gold, you don't have to fight for it. Just pick it up and you both get the same amount, which is a good thing because I felt that that kept it from being a competitive thing and more of a cooperative thing. The game really pushes teamwork. It really gets you to work together and to try to get through it as a team. I felt trying to focus more on getting the two to work together as a team as opposed to being competitive made the experience a lot more enjoyable, because there were times where Forest Lock would be low on something or I'd be low on something. It'd be like, hey, I've got this, here, you can have it. It's like, oh, thanks, I need that. All right, here you go. And we would try and work together. I really personally enjoyed sniping a lot. Because of that, I'd always try and back up Forest Lock by sniping any enemy. There were certain times where we just had a flow and we worked really well together in the game. And it was those parts of the game where I thought the game really shined. And it was just tons of fun. Some people complain about the item management, and personally, I didn't really mind it that much. My only real problem with it is you can press up, down, left, right in order to quickly switch to a certain item that's placed there, but they don't allow the same thing to the items that are in the corners because your item management's on a 3x3 grid, so you have 9 spaces. Unfortunately, the ones that are in the corners, you can't automatically switch to them with the D-pad. That bugged me because I wanted to use those items instead of having to press triangle, switch to the item, and then use it. You can't pause the game while you're shifting through your items. This can be an issue because you've got Manginis to your right and freaking huge dogs to your left, or you need to use an item or you want to switch to a grenade or something. Your companion needs something, you got to switch to it and give it to them. While you're trying to do that and you're trying to sift through the menu while you have enemies attacking you, it's a fucking mess sometimes. And I think that could have easily been taken care of if you could just press the D-pad in the corners as well. I think the game is a lot of fun. I think a lot of people complain about how, you can't move and shoot. And yeah, that is kind of an issue, but I played Resident Evil 4 not that long beforehand, so I was already used to the controls.
Honestly, I absolutely enjoy the co-op of this game. I think that it shines the best out of the story part, which is the weakest. The co-op is the best part of this game, I think. It really holds up on its own. And anything else about the game is a disappointment. The co-op aspect of the game is not. Honestly, I really was looking forward to playing Resident Evil 5 again at some point. Being able to play online with Shintai, being that he never played Resident Evil 5 before, was very cool. And I think also it was a little easier for us because I've played the game before. I was able to give Shintai clues as to what to look out for and what specific things to do that would aid us in making the game a little easier for us, especially with the final boss. There is actually a way to kill the final boss in pretty much one hit. Another thing that I want to say that we didn't mention, that Shintai probably didn't mention, but it's pretty funny. It doesn't really add anything to the game. I just think it's pretty funny. You could actually hurt yourself. Technically, you don't hurt yourself, but you could actually shoot yourself and stab yourself. And if you use a stun rod, you can stun your own character when they pass out. I don't know. I just think it's funny. It's just hilarious. More or less, Shintai stunned the opponent with the stun rod. So there's a lot of really weird things in the game. You can even make your own co-op player get stuck in areas if, say, you have to stop a conveyor belt. I was trying to stop the conveyor belt from moving so that Shintai can run across. I accidentally turned it off, so he got trapped, and there was a chainsaw guy chasing him, and I had to turn it back on again to move this huge box out of the way. What I think about co-op is, like Shintai said, teamwork is important, and sometimes you can either aid or break it. And one other thing, too, is an area in the game where there are lickers walking all across the walls and stuff. I'm sitting and telling Shintai, I'm like, look, you gotta be very quiet and don't cause any noise, and then Shintai runs, and they start chasing us right as we get to the very end. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And then I feel like an idiot when Shintai had to go and move a huge dumpster out of the way to get to this key or whatever, or go inside this building and lock a door. I ended up being an idiot, started shooting the lickers and caused a lot of noise. So that wasn't very smart. It's fun because you can mess up the game for both yourself and as well as the person you're playing online with. Or you can work together, make the game flow very well. So we kind of had both of those things as we were playing the game. And what that shows me with Resident Evil 5 doesn't seem to get a lot of credit is that the co-op in this game is absolutely fantastic. I had no complaints with playing online. Matter of fact, the only complaint that I have with it is that random times you will drop. It's a Resident Evil 5 bug. It's a Capcom bug with the game. For whatever reason, at random times you will drop online. It's happened to me and Shintai twice. And I come to find out, looking online, that it is a problem with the game that was never fixed. That's the only big complaint.
But keep that in mind, folks. We played through the game entirely throughout all the DLC. That's a lot of hours of gameplay, and it only happened 2 times. So it's not a big issue. It's not something that you constantly need to worry about. It probably won't be on your mind for the most part, but it is there and it can happen.
All I have to say is that co-op definitely worth it. It's definitely the best aspect of this game, which I will pretty much stand by pretty much from here on out.
One of the things I really liked about the game was upgrading your weapons. I always thought that was really fun. Adds kind of like a little bit of an RPG aspect to the game. Something that was taken over from Resident Evil 4. I think it's a lot of fun because you can go back to certain levels if you want to, and you can grind for money, and you can make your guns more powerful. I think that's really cool.
I will agree with that. The way in this game it works is that when you're going through the game, you can go back and revisit chapters again. You can kind of grind for money. What you do is that you go back to these areas where you pick up items and treasures you found from previous chapters or blue medals, and you can go back and buy stuff. You can unlock items and like the bonus parts of the game after completion, unlock figurines and whatnot. What you do with the money, say for example you buy a rocket launcher, or you buy a handgun, a shotgun, a machine gun, or grenade launcher. You can upgrade or buy first aid sprays or upgrade your weapons and stuff to hold higher capacity of bullets, to make them have a faster range of firepower, to even be able to reload your gun faster, which in this game is important to have a faster reload time. The main thing I want to mention is that there are actually more powerful shotguns and handguns and machine guns in the game, so I advise anyone who's playing the game to not spend their money early on the original weapons you get. There are going to be more powerful weapons like magnums and stuff you get later on in the game. Eventually is where you want to put your money at, is on those weapons.
Well, there is a trophy if you care about that sort of thing, or achievement, where all of the weapons maxed out and then you get a trophy or achievement for that. But if you don't care about that sort of thing, definitely listen to Forest Lock. Don't pour your money into the earlier weapons that you get. The ones that you get later on are usually much better.
I will stand by this, and Shintai can back me up if I'm right or wrong. Buy the stun rod. Don't listen to what anybody else says. Buy the stun rod, and whenever it comes available, trust me, it makes the game a lot easier towards the end.
I've actually been playing through the game a little bit with another friend of mine who wanted to play through the game co-op. I've been playing through the game with the stun rod, and it makes the game way easier. It's pretty OP.
It makes some guns in the game look like nothing.
Yeah.
And this looks like the shotgun.
It's pretty powerful.
If an enemy transforms, you can use a stun rod and hit them with it. It'll kill them instantly. And a gun will take forever to kill them in their other form. But the stun rod kills them instantly. And even some of the really stronger beetles, these things that can like claw you in one hit and kill you instantly, which I can't stand in the game, you can actually use this to stun them. You can actually stun them with the stun rod. I mean, yeah, that's what it is for. But you can actually do serious damage with the stun rod.
Now, for all the praise we give the game, though, there is one huge glaring fault with it. I think Forest Lock can agree with me on. The boss fights are not good.
I think there was only one boss fight I might have enjoyed. Even then, most of them were either mediocre to just disappointing.
The only one I had some fun with was that black one where you get to get the flamethrower and you start flaming him up. That one was pretty cool. Otherwise, most of the boss fights were annoying and tedious. Particularly Wesker. Ugh.
You're going to get into the game where the game won't tell you anything about the Wesker fights. There's even at one point in the first fight you get into, you do realize that you actually have to just hide from Wesker for real life 7 minutes.
Yes, you have to literally wait 7 minutes. Not just game time, real time. And then he'll just be like, I'm disappointed, and leave.
And that is not even the true fight, which after the fact, you're like, are you serious? And even that fight was really stupid.
The biggest problem with some of these boss fights is that the game is kind of unclear on what you're supposed to do. There was this one boss that we fought that it seemed kind of obvious what we were supposed to do. There was these giant glowing bowl that you were supposed to shoot at. But what the game didn't tell you was that there was this satellite gun or whatever that would shoot a freaking laser from space that would kill the monster a lot faster. And we didn't know it was there. The only reason we figured it out was because that glitch that we were talking about occurred. I was kicked out of the game and Forrest was still there. Sheva said, oh, we need to use this thing, satellite gun. And then Forrest was like, oh, that's how you beat him. Why don't you tell us sooner?
And here's another thing I want to mention when you play online versus offline. Co-op pretty much mutes the character to where the game does not help you in giving you any hints as to how to do certain things, which I totally forgot about because I haven't played the game single player in a while. When you play the game single player, you pretty much have an understanding of what to do. Co-op, you don't know nothing what's going on because the game pretty much disables that feature with the character being that it's co-op. In a way, Capcom expects you to have played this game single player or played this game before. Which, when you really get down to it, did they really make the game for you to play it single player and co-op? Or did they expect you to have a strategy guide or someone who has played this game before? So, in reality, the game can be a detriment in that sense that you're going in there expecting to know what's happening, expecting to know what to do. And that may be either disappointing or that you may like a challenge. But because I kind of played the game before, it made a lot of the fights a lot easier. But that really was one aspect of that boss fight I totally forgot about. But just remember, if you play the game single player, you will have some help from the AI to give you an indication of what to do.
But overall, I think both of us recommend to just play the game co-op. with a friend. It's a lot more enjoyable that way. And little things like that might be missed is not really anything to cry home to mom about. It's just some game tips. Like we said before, we had the gold edition, so this game came with some DLC. I think the main DLCs to talk about would be Lost in Nightmare, Desperate Escape, the Versus mode, and Mercenaries. Lost in Nightmares, let's start with that. What'd you think about it?
Lost in Nightmares is this idea that it first started from the main game of Resident Evil 5. Believe it or not, Lost in Nightmares actually did not exist. It was an idea that came up where there's a clip of backstory in the actual main focus of the game with Jill and Chris going to this mansion that resembles the mansion from Resident Evil, which is kind of ironic but a little cool at the same time. And all it is just you infiltrating this mansion and fighting Wesker. Nothing really crazy about it. But what I liked about this DLC was that the scare factor was outstanding.
Yeah, Resident Evil 5 was not scary at all. It was an action survival game, and Lost in Nightmares actually felt like a survival horror game instead of an action game.
Yeah, if you want to really feel like you're going back to Resident Evil 1, there is actually an Easter egg on a door that you go to. This door is actually the main entrance when you come into the mansion, and the character will say, "I do not want to leave." Go to the door 3 times. Afterwards, the cameras will change, fixed to like the first Resident Evil game. It's awesome to be able to play the game in that tank control style, and it's really cool. But if you don't like tank controls, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I tried it for a bit, and I was just like, nope, not happening.
So the Lost in Nightmares DLC is definitely worth you playing after you actually play the main story of 5.
I recommend it as well. I thought Lost in Nightmares was really good, more based on the puzzles rather than action. It was a lot of fun. However, same can't be said for Desperate Escape. Desperate Escape sucks. Don't try it.
Desperate Escapes has a lot of problems. It is by far, and considered on most forums and whatnot, the hardest part of the game for all the wrong reasons. Even on amateurs, what difficulty we chose this for after looking into all the factors of how difficult this DLC was.
Mind you, we beat the rest of the game and Lost in Nightmares on normal. We played the game like you're normally supposed to, but apparently Desperate Escape was really, really hard, so we were like, alright, whatever, we'll just do it on amateur and just get through it. Even on amateur, this was really difficult for the wrong reasons.
The main problem with this was when going through the DLC of this, it literally is what it stands for, Desperate Escapes, because you have every major enemy and every minor enemy fighting you all at once in waves. Double chainsaw guys and this big fat exploding guy, and then you have this Gatling gun guys. You have to go through a timer to stay alive. And even on amateur, I got knocked off a cliff and died. And on amateur, I'm just like, what's going on?
And the worst part is you can't take your items that you got from the main game. You have to use whatever the game decides to whatever give you during it. You're probably going to be running out of healing items and running out of ammo because there's just so many friggin' enemies.
And what's really disappointing about this DLC is unlike Ada Separate Ways, which actually has continuity, makes perfect sense backtracking of what she did in Resident Evil 4. This is like Jill's Separate Ways, but a lot crappier. Who thought this was a great idea to show what Jill did during the time of separation in the main story of Resident Evil 5 to the ending of the game? It was terrible. There was really no reason.
We didn't need to know what was happening during these events because nothing happened. She ran away. They got in a helicopter and that's it. You know, it's like, whatever, who cares?
That was all. All you see in it is just one character, which I'm not going to say, one person, and even that wasn't important. So if you want a challenge, if you just want the trophy or achievement for it, that's about the only thing it's worth. And you can play this on any difficulty. It doesn't matter. It gives you the same trophy. So don't worry. If it's too difficult, you can play it on that. However, there is an S ranking trophy if you complete it on veteran or S ranking.
Forget that.
Yeah, I wouldn't even want to do it, but it is there.
Easily the worst DLC. If you have the vanilla copy of this game and you want to get some DLC for it, do not get Desperate Escape. It's not worth it. I'd say some of the other DLC in the game was kind of meh. Like the Versus mode was not very interesting.
Versus mode is confusing, I think, because what it does is tries to give you different missions, so to speak, to make the game different. Say you're on a different team, 2 versus 2. You can say if me and Shintai are on a separate team, we can actually kill the opposing team to gain points, to decrease their points to see who have the most points in the end. You can do single games where you fight enemies to get the biggest amount of points, and whoever has the most points win, which isn't anything special, to be completely honest. I do agree it doesn't really add anything. I think it was more or less just something extra to add into the Gold Edition version, which it's okay.
Mercenaries I thought was alright. Mercenaries is basically just you play as some older characters from Resident Evil series like Rebecca, and you can kill waves and waves of Mangini. That's all it really is. It's alright, not anything special, but it's better than Versus mode.
There's actually two different mercenaries. There is the regular mercenaries that is unlocked when you beat main vanilla of Resident Evil 5, but you beat the main story of 5. Then there's Mercenary Reunions, which adds Barry and Rebecca and a few other characters. In that version actually gives some of the players and characters different moves that weren't actually in the original Mercenaries for some of the older characters. That one is best Mercenaries to play. It's the most difficult one, but you have a lot more secret characters, different outfits that you can change the characters in, and even their outfits change some of their weapons and stuff. So that's where you're going to spend a lot of your gameplay time. It's kind of unlocking different skins and different weapons and whatnot, and just getting more trophies or achievements.
Other than that, there's not much else for the DLC. So I think that's pretty much it. So I think we should start winding down. Personally, I think if you're going to get this game, I don't recommend the vanilla version. I actually say go ahead and get the Gold Edition because Lost in Nightmares is really good, and I would say that the Mercenaries is also really good. Desperate Escape may not be that good, but the other stuff it comes with is worth it, and it's not that much more expensive than the vanilla version, so you might as well just get the gold one. Overall, Resident Evil 5 is a good game, especially if you're playing with a friend. You got someone to play either at home, split screen with, or if you got a friend that you can talk to Skype on while playing the game. The game is a lot of fun.
I do agree with a lot of what Shintai said about the game. I'm pretty much in this review with Shintai, I'm pretty equal because as a big fan of Resident Evil as I am, the thing about this game is, although I like the older Resident Evils a lot more than this game does do one thing that the other Resident Evil games can't, that's co-op. In this day and age with online gaming being a huge thing now, that really adds to that game. Whatever faults Resident Evil 5 has in terms of its co-op makes up for that. You definitely get the Gold Edition. Don't waste your time buying the $20 version of Resident Evil 5 because you're just going to waste gigs of space on your hard drive for downloading the other DLC. It's just better if you just get the Gold Edition. And you're going to have a lot of fun with this game. I think for the most part you might can beat the main campaign maybe say 10 hours, 12 hours. Something like that. And the DLCs are not that long. You probably can beat them within maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how good you are at them. Desperate Escape on Amateur, you can beat it in 45 minutes. So other than that, definitely go for it. I think the story is a little disappointing. Could have been better. Could have had a better script. Could have had a better connection. The players to be involved in the story, but unfortunately it falls flat. But I think the gameplay makes up for it. The co-op makes up for it. Everything else just falls into place with this game. So I think the game is actually not bad. I actually think it's pretty good.
Thank you for joining me on this review, Forest Lock. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I'm hoping now we can actually play Resident Evil 6 and maybe review that as well.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Be sure to check out that review when that comes out. I'm sure it'll be very interesting. Alright, this has been Shintai and Forest Lock. Please be sure to check out his channel. It'll be in the description below.